Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, we are reading from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, verse number 6. So you can all repeat after me. Na tad bhasayate suryo, na shashanko na pavakaha, yad gatva na nivartante, tadhama paramam mama. Na tad bhasayate suryo, na shashanko na pavakaha, yad gatva na nivartante, tadhama paramam mama. Na tad bhasayate suryo, na shashanko na pavakaha, yad gatva na nivartante, tadhama paramam mama. Na tad bhasyate suryo, na shashanko na pavakaha, yad gatva na nivartante, tadhama paramam mama. Would you like to recite? Na tad bhasayate suryo, na shashanko na pavakaha, yad gatva na nivartante, tadhama paramam mama. Oh, very nice. That's good. Okay, so word to word meaning. Na, not. Tat, that. Bhasayate, illuminates. Suryaha, the sun. Na, nor. Shashankaha, the moon. No, na, nor. Pavakaha, fire, electricity. Yat, where. Gatva, going. Na, never. Nivartante, they come back. Tad dhama, that abode. Paramam, supreme. Mama, my. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. That supreme abode of mine is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. Purport. The spiritual world, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, which is known as Krishna Loka, Golok Vrindavan, is described here. In the spiritual sky, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity, because all the planets are self-illuminous. We have only one planet in this universe, the sun, which is self-luminous. But all the planets in the spiritual sky are self-luminous. The shining effulgence of those planets, called Vaikunthas, constitutes the shining sky known as the Brahma Jyoti. Actually, the effulgence is emanating from the planet of Krishna, Golok Vrindavan. Part of that shining effulgence is covered by the Mahat Tattva, the material world. Other than this, the major portion of that shining sky is full of spiritual planets, which are known as Vaikunthas, chief of which is Golok Vrindavan. As long as the living entity is in this dark material world, he is in conditional life. But as soon as he reaches the spiritual sky, by cutting through the false perverted tree of this material world, he becomes liberated. Then there is no chance of his coming back here. In this conditioned life, the living entity considers himself to be the lord of the material world. But in the liberated state, he enters into the spiritual kingdom and becomes an associate of the Lord. There he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life, and full knowledge. One should be captivated by this information. One should desire to transfer himself to the eternal world and extricate himself from this false reflection of reality. For one who is too attached to this material world, it is very difficult to cut that attachment. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of gradually becoming detached. One has to associate himself with devotees, those who are in Krishna consciousness. One should search out a society dedicated to Krishna consciousness and learn how to discharge devotional service. In this way, he can cut his attachment to the material world. One cannot become detached from the attraction of the material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. He must become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, in the 12th chapter, therefore one must take it very seriously that devotional service as described in the 12th chapter is the only way to get out of this false representation of the real tree. In chapter 14, the contamination of all kinds of processes in the material nature are described. Only devotional service is described as purely transcendental. The words paramam mama are very important here. Actually, every nook and corner is the property of the Supreme Lord. But the spiritual world is paramam. It is full of 6 opulences. The Katha Upanishad also states that in the spiritual world there is no need for sunshine, moonshine or stars. Na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra tarakam. For the spiritual sky is illuminated by the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That supreme abode can be achieved only by surrender and by no other means. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamahyam Dadati Sopatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Atapadakamlam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Grishmanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaivacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Guru Vaishnav Bhagwan Tine Rasmarane Hoy Vigna Vinashana Nayashe Hoy Nisha Vanchita Puran Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashat Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this verse, Krishna is describing his own supreme planet, which is Golok Vrindavan, and he is referring to some points here. So he says, Na tad bhasayate suryo, na shashanko, na pavakaha, which means Krishna is explaining that the spiritual world is not illuminated by the sun, nor by the moon, nor by electricity or fire. In fact, if anything, it is self-effulgent. So Krishna explains here that, actually Srila Prabhupada in the purport explains that the illumination of the spiritual worlds comes from Golok Vrindavan. Actually, if you go even deeper, you will see that the illumination in Golok Vrindavan also comes from Krishna. So actually, Krishna is the effulgent one, and from him, all of the 3 worlds are illuminated. So you might ask, how is that possible? Like, in the spiritual world, these things are possible. For us to materially conceive of these things, it's very difficult. In fact, it is said that, when Krishna wears his ornaments and his necklaces and rubies and everything, all of them actually reflect the light of the Lord. So Krishna himself is self-effulgent, and the effulgence that comes out of Krishna, these rubies and everything reflect, and that is how Krishna appears very beautiful. So now if we cross the spiritual world and we come to this material world, we notice that there are many, many beautiful places in this material world also. Like the other day, I just opened up my YouTube, and there was one video which came up, scenic tour through Kyrgyzstan, I think it's called. It's some country in like Central Asia. Oh my God, like you look at it, it's so beautiful. Like there's like snow-covered mountains, there's green mountains, there's cliffs, there's like desert-like mountains, there are plains, there are wild horses running through. It looks so beautiful. Like Central Asia, that's why like people say that like the Aryans had gone to, not come from, but actually Aryans had gone to when they were scared of Parshuram. They all ran away to that region. So, and there's like beautiful lakes. Some of these lakes are like pink in color, like it's so beautiful. You might say that, like just to explore the beauty in this material world, it'll take us like a lifetime. Why should we bother about the spiritual world? So yes, superficially everything in this material world also looks very beautiful. And one of the reasons is that this material world is nothing but a reflection of the spiritual world. So actually the spiritual world is 3 or 4 times, or you could say even like many multitude times more beautiful than this material world. So if you can imagine how beautiful this world is, you can only imagine how beautiful spiritual world is. The problem with the beauty in this material world is that this beauty is covered with temporariness. So this beauty of this material world is not permanent. It's temporary. The other problem with the beauty in this material world is that there are problems associated with this beauty also. Like for example, you imagine the snow-covered mountains. Wow, so beautiful. But if you want to go there, you have to wear hiking gear. You need to wear like 4 or 5 layers. And if you don't wear those 4 or 5 layers, you might get frostbite. And so many people, they die in these places also. So it's almost like, and then you might say, okay, well, that's fine. I'm not going to go to the snow-covered mountains. I will go to the green mountains, like where there are lots of trees. But then there is another problem, because over there you get all kinds of other animals. Like you get snakes, you get other like animals like tigers and other animals that can eat you, leopards and snow leopards, all of these animals. So you have to be careful. In fact, there are so many insects in these places also. So you lie down on the ground and you'll be covered with insects. So that is not a very good place either. So regardless of wherever you go, and I don't have to talk about the desert places. Like if you go to desert, obviously you will become thirsty and you can die from thirst. So anything in this material world is like a fire. Like how many of you have seen, like when you turn on fire, there are some moths that run towards it. There are some insects that get attracted by fire. That is the beauty of this material world also. So in this material world, anything that appears beautiful, there's usually a catch. Terms and conditions apply. Always there is some terms and conditions in the beauty of this material world. Like you might like going out on the beach, like, oh wow, this beach is so nice. Yeah, it is beautiful, because Krishna explains that out of all the water bodies, he is the ocean. So he explains that ocean is a representation of Krishna. So in one sense, yeah, that's good. But then how often do we see people getting stung by jellyfish? Recently there was someone who died because they were swimming and they got eaten by a shark. I think 17-year-old girl or something like that. Recently it was in the news. Yeah. And then there are so many people who, when they're swimming, they get taken away by the undercurrent of the ocean also. So even this ocean is not a safe place. So actually any beauty in this material world is described as a very dangerous proposition. So any beauty in this material world is extremely dangerous. But in the spiritual world, it's not like that. So in the spiritual world, everything is Satchidan Ananda. So everything is blissful. Everything is filled with opulence. And the opulence increases day by day. And not even day by day, second by second, the opulence and the happiness increases in the spiritual world. So Krishna describes the spiritual world, like here he has just given a small hint of what's there in the spiritual world. But if you read the descriptions of Golok Vrindavan, it's actually extremely captivating. And a wise person will desire to go back to the spiritual world. It's not just that in our tradition we have this. Even in Christianity, they have this concept. In Christianity, Jesus Christ tells his disciples, he says that one must not keep their treasure in this material world. One's treasure must be in the spiritual world. He says that when one becomes attracted to the treasure in the spiritual world, then the attraction of this material world becomes very negligible, very redundant. So then a person is not that keen on enjoying this material world. In fact, like you might think that, okay, well, you might not be entirely convinced that, beauty in this material world is not that dangerous. I'll give you one example. So both of you have heard of Dalai Lama, right? You know the Dalai Lama. So in the Buddhist tradition, the Dalai Lama generally he takes birth, and his birth can be predicted by some of the astrologers. So the astrologers generally sit down and they look at the charts and they decide where the Dalai Lama is going to be born. So in the 1900s, I think late 1900s, they were trying, because the previous Dalai Lama had passed away, so they were trying to find out where the new Dalai Lama was born. Generally, the Dalai Lama is born in Tibet, in China, in like that neighboring region. This time they found out that the Dalai Lama is born in Switzerland. So they were like, why is Dalai Lama born in Switzerland? So they went there and they found the guy, and the guy was genuine. So he was the real Dalai Lama. So he was only a 5 or 6 year old boy then. So they bought him, and then when he became around 10 or 12 years old, they asked him, like, what happened? Why were you born in Switzerland? So then the Dalai Lama explains that actually what had happened was that in my last life, I had visited Switzerland once. And because I had visited Switzerland, I became so attracted by the beauty of Switzerland. And because of that, you can see he had that one small desire of wanting to enjoy Switzerland. And because of that, he had to be born in Switzerland. So he was not born in a so-called pious place according to the Buddhist tradition. Like if he was born in Tibet, he could easily deliver people. But because he was born in Switzerland, he had to undergo like a whole purification process again. And then after that, he was able to, become the Dalai Lama again. So it goes to show that any kind of desire that we have in this material world, it's almost like a killer, because it brings you back in the material world and you're forced to take birth in places that you may not even want to after some time. So in the spiritual world, however, everything is conscious, everything is blissful, and it is explained in Brahma Samhita that every step is a dance and every word is a song. So anyone, like all of the devotees who are living there, they are continuously in constant bliss. They are always associating with Krishna or with the devotees of Krishna. And because of that, their ecstasy increases day by day and second by second. Actually, like if you read the description of Golok Vrindavan, it's extremely blissful. Like you will become attracted by the description of Golok Vrindavan, especially if you believe in these descriptions of Golok Vrindavan. Obviously, the devotees believe in these because they are Shastra and they're coming from Krishna. But just to give you a small hint, it is explained that there are lots of desire trees there. Desire trees meaning you can request whatever you want and the trees will deliver all those kinds of things to you. It can be eatables, it can be a house, it can be whatever, clothes to wear, whatever you want to have, Krishna or the trees will provide that. Then it is explained that the rivers have so much fragrance in them. Like as the rivers flow, like the wind that flows over the rivers, it brings such fragrant breeze along with it. The river banks, they are decorated with, it's explained, with jewels and rubies. Like over here you only find rubies in mines, but over there the river banks are decorated with rubies. The trees have emeralds on them, like instead of leaves they look like emeralds because all of them are shining with exquisite beauty. And then it is explained that, like in the wells, you get so many different kinds of milk you can find. Yeah, you can, over here we get chocolate milk, we get badam milk if you're from India, or you can get banana milk. But over there are 1,001 types of different flavors you can get from one well itself, because the well keeps producing different types of flavors every day. So it's so blissful. And the other thing which most people don't understand, or the people which people generally tend to ignore, is that the spiritual world is extremely conscious also. Like the spiritual world interacts with you. It's not over here like you take a rock and you throw it, like it doesn't interact with you. But in the spiritual world, everything interacts. Like for example, it is explained that when Krishna walks on the Govardhan hill, the Govardhan hill reacts. How? As Krishna is walking, suddenly like all of the flowers, they sprout. Like the trees, they grow in size. They react to Krishna's appearance. So the acharyas, they explain it as if like when you see someone you love and then the hair on your body, they stand on end. That is how Govardhan, when Govardhan sees that Krishna is stepping on him, Govardhan reacts in that way. So Govardhan's hair stand on end in the form of all of these trees and flowers blossoming immediately. Then it is explained that, waterfalls, they start flowing with increasing vigor and increasing force. What is that compared to? They compare that to when you see Krishna, or when the devotee sees Krishna, there are tears in the eyes of the devotees. So similarly, when Govardhan sees Krishna, immediately like the tears in the forms of fountain, they start flowing as well. And then it is explained that the wells, the water in the wells, they become completely still. Like not a single movement or ripple can be seen in that. How is that? That is explained as when the pure devotee sees Krishna, sometimes they become stunned. They become stunned because of ecstasy. Because they're like, oh my God, this is so beautiful. So they become completely stunned as well. Then it is explained that the birds, they start chirping very nicely, very beautifully they start chirping. And that the Acharyas explain, that is like when you are seeing Krishna and you're trying to speak to him, and then your voice chokes up because you're not able to speak because of that emotion. Similarly, Govardhan also is chirping in that way because he's not able to speak. And the sound of the chirping is like the choking of the voice. So similarly, Govardhan interacts with Krishna also. And Govardhan interacts with all of the devotees that are present in Golok Vrindavan. It interacts with the cows that are present. The cows interact with Krishna. Like for example, when Krishna goes away, the cows stop giving milk. They don't give any more milk. And when Krishna comes near them, they run towards Krishna to embrace him. Well, they can't embrace, but they want to like lick Krishna and they want to smear him with their own dust. And even the cows are very sentient. What to speak of, like we were talking about trees, how trees and plants, they sprout their flowers and they sprout their leaves as soon as they see Krishna. In fact, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a description of Krishna and Balaram. They were walking through the forests of Vrindavan. And it is explained that all of the trees that were there, they started to bend down. Why? Because they wanted to touch Krishna's feet. So the trees are bending down with their branches and they're offering flowers at the lotus feet of Krishna. And when Krishna and Balaram look at this, they start laughing. And Krishna says that actually the trees want to serve Balaram. And Balaram says that no, actually the trees want to serve you. And that itself creates a transcendental conflict between Krishna and Balaram. So actually the spiritual world is extremely blissful. The pastimes that are mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, one can appreciate. Like when Krishna plays with his friends in the forests of Vrindavan while the cows are herding around. Those are extremely blissful as well. Like can you imagine like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Satyam Param Dhimahi, who is the absolute truth. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is eating the remnants of the food that his devotees have offered. So basically what happens is Yashoda Ma, she gives Krishna some, at least in Srimad Bhagavatam it is explained, she gave him some curd rice. Now you might say, well, you know, like, was Krishna South Indian? Like he's getting curd rice. But actually that is the description that is there. Curd rice and pickled fruit, it is explained, she gave him once. Pickled fruit means what? Like mango pickle, she gave him. So you can say, well, Krishna was South Indian. But actually at that time, all of these things were common to everyone. So she gave him some curd rice and some pickled fruit. And at that time, when the Gopas see Krishna eating, they snatch Krishna's food and they have a bite first. Now, can you imagine, like we generally tend to offer all of our food to Krishna first, and the devotees are so strict that we don't even taste the food before offering to Krishna. And we eat the remnants of whatever Krishna offers. But the devotees in Vrindavan, Golok Vrindavan, they are so elevated and so high in their consciousness that they are able to eat from Krishna's plate or from Krishna's tiffin box, and Krishna happily eats their remnants. This is not something that is very easy to understand, because even Lord Brahma got bewildered by this. Like Lord Brahma was thinking, how is it possible for this young boy to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead? How is it possible for this boy to be the source of Vishnu? He says, this is not possible. I don't trust this boy to be the source of Vishnu or to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the boy who in his previous incarnation, he came and he established Dharma in the form of Lord Ram. He obeyed Dharma to the book. In fact, like Dharma is written after the incarnation of Lord Ram. Like the way in which Lord Ram acts, that itself becomes Dharma. But here we see that that very incarnation or manifestation of Dharma is breaking Dharma. Even in the smallest things, like he's eating the remnants of his devotees. So that bewildered Lord Brahma quite a lot. It may not bewilder us because we just think, oh yeah, what's the big deal in that? But actually for one who is a strict follower of Dharma, these things are quite bewildering. And yeah, he became bewildered. And then he decided to test Krishna by seeing whether Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead or not. And because of that, he committed an offense, which he found out about 1 year later, actually. And we see that when Lord Brahma came, Lord Brahma was like a golden personality. And all of the cowherd boyfriends of Krishna, like the Gopas, they were standing at a distance and they were watching. And when Lord Brahma came, like you can imagine, Krishna is like a 5-year-old boy, so maybe just a little bit older than Agastya. and you have a aged man, like very old man, golden body. Brahma is not white, actually. Brahma is golden, by the way. So Brahma came in his golden body. He had such a big beard as well. And then he's falling down at the feet of a 5-year-old boy. So when the Gopas, when the cowherd boyfriends of Krishna, they saw this, they became extremely bewildered. And they started laughing at Brahma. They're like, who is this person? Why is he falling down at the feet of Krishna? And when Krishna saw that his cowherd boyfriends were laughing, he became restless as well. He wanted Brahma to go away. Like, please go away. I want to play with my friends. So Lord Brahma is offering all of his prayers, and Krishna is not even looking at him. He's just looking at his friends. He doesn't care. So then after that, when Brahma notices that, Krishna is not interested in hearing his prayers, so then Lord Brahma just goes away. And then Krishna immediately calls his cowherd boyfriends, and they start playing. Same thing happens when Indra does the Govardhan Leela at that time. Like after he had destroyed the whole Braj Mandal, at that time Indra comes with Surabhi cow, and he does a full-on Abhishek of Krishna, like with all of the royal paraphernalia. Like Airavat came and he's offering milk to Krishna, and he's doing an arati of Krishna. He's singing so nicely. Indra is doing all of this. He's offering the most opulent items like sandalwood, agaru wood, etc. He's offering such an opulent worship of Krishna. But the cowherd boys are looking at this again, and they're like, what is this? Like, looks so funny. Then as soon as Indra left with Airavat, basically the cowherd boyfriends, they came and they picked up the paraphernalia that Indra had left, and they started mocking Indra, and they were making fun of Indra, and they started doing arti. Oh, this is how Indra was doing arti of you. Ha 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 ha. They started laughing, and they started singing songs to Krishna in their broken voice. They're not very good singers. They're singing in broken voices. But it is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna was way more pleased with the arti that was offered by the Gopas than that was given by Indra. So actually, this is the mood in Golok Vrindavan. In Golok Vrindavan, every step is a dance, every word is a song. So even if they're singing in broken voices, or even if they are, not very conversant in how to offer prayers and arti, etc., Krishna is more interested in accepting that kind of service, because that madhurya bhav is there. So madhurya means that sweetness is there in Vrindavan. And it's not just there in the devotees of Vrindavan, but that sweetness is there in the very land of Vrindavan. Like, we know that, like when Lord Ram went to the forest, at that time Bharat came and he took the sandals of Lord Ram and he placed them as the ruler in Nandigram, and he worshipped them there. But what do you think happens to Krishna's sandals in Vrindavan? What kind of sandals does he wear in Vrindavan? He doesn't wear sandals. Why does he not wear sandals? No, good thought, but no, actually no, that's not the reason. Why?
Because he wanted Brajvasis to feel his presence. Like,
Brajvasis or someone else? We are talking about the land of Vrindavan. So actually it is explained that the land of Vrindavan, so Vrindavan Dham itself, she wants to store Krishna's footprints. So she requests Krishna not to wear sandals. She says to Krishna that, like, I will do whatever is there in my limits or whatever is there in my capacity to preserve your footprints. So it is explained that whenever Krishna would walk on the spiritual world in Golok Vrindavan, Vrindavan Dham itself would preserve those footprints, because she did not want Krishna to wear footprints because of that reason. And whenever, like, how many, I'm assuming all of you have been to Vrindavan? Yeah? Okay, you haven't been to Vrindavan. Have you been to Gokul? Yeah. From Gokul to Govardhan, what is the distance? It's quite a lot, isn't it? It's almost like 15 to 20 kilometers.
Even from Vrindavan to Govardhan.
Yeah, from Vrindavan to Govardhan also it's such a long distance. So how was it possible for Krishna to travel 15 to 20 kilometers in one day, just one way and then come back? And he used to do that every day. So actually it is explained that Golok Vrindavan, the land of Golok Vrindavan itself used to shrink. Yeah, so that Krishna does not have to walk that much. And then whenever Krishna would walk over Golok Vrindavan and he would leave his footprints, Vrindavan would capture those footprints and she would keep them within herself and she would keep them within her heart. So actually the land of Golok Vrindavan itself is very spiritual and it's a conscious living entity. So that is how beautiful Krishna's Golok Dham is. And that is why the Acharyas say that actually we need to develop a desire to go there. And we need to, it's not that we can also become like a Gopa or a Gopi of Vrindavan, but actually we can appreciate Vrindavan and we can maybe become a servant of the servant of the servants of the Gopas and the Gopis. And we can reside in that Dham also. And that is an invitation from Krishna. You might say, well, what's our audacity? Like, are we being, what is that Hindi word we say for audacity? There is one. Apni हैसियत. हाँ, that's right. हम अपनी हैसियत से ज़्यादा कुछ मांग रहे हैं. We are asking something for which is beyond our capacity to do. Like we don't deserve it. You might think like that. But actually we should remove that thought, because if that was not the case, why would Krishna invite us to the spiritual world? Actually the spiritual world is our real home. So we came from the spiritual world, we fell down because we were envious of Krishna. But as soon as we revive our fallen, or we revive our constitutional position as being a servant of Krishna, we immediately become eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. So that is why Krishna is saying, Yad gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. In fact, Krishna is saying that if you come back to the spiritual world once, he said you won't have to go back again to the material world. You won't have to go down to this world of suffering. So actually we need to develop this intense desire to go back home, back to Godhead. And that is an invitation that Krishna is giving us, that we have forgotten for millions and millions of lifetimes. We're taking birth in family of insects, in family of animals, in family of fish, plants, all of these things, but we don't want to go back home, back to Godhead. Actually, it says that we are suffering in hell right now, but we are too scared of immortality. We are too scared of a life without suffering. We are happy to suffer in this material world, but we don't want to go back to a place where we are so scared of going to a place where there is no suffering. It's food for thought. Like, why is it like that? It's because we have so many attachments here. But remaining, you can speculate and figure out why we don't want to go back to the spiritual world. But having said that, we can talk a lot about the spiritual world. Our acharyas have written so many books about the spiritual world, describing the pastimes, the land of Vrindavan, how the devotees interact with each other, and everything. Like, there's so much to discuss about Vrindavan, but I guess we'll stop here for today. So if there's any questions, any thoughts, any comments, anything you'd like to share, we can discuss.
Just one question. Is it true that the Golok Vrindavan, the spiritual world, is actually the copy of what we see in actual Vrindavan?
Yeah, actually.
Is it the same? It just kind of got delivered here.
That's a good question. So when Krishna was here 5,000 years ago, that Golok Vrindavan was different to the Golok Vrindavan that is there currently. Yeah, so some people say that some of the aspects of Golok Vrindavan are still the same, in the sense that when you go to Golok Vrindavan, you feel complete ecstasy. And if we have the proper eyes, if we have trained in Krishna consciousness for a while, you will be able to see Krishna there, even though Krishna is not physically there. So you can train your eyes to see Krishna there in the present Golok Vrindavan. Why? Because in Golok Vrindavan currently, like in Vrindavan UP, that is there currently, over there is a form of Leela which is known as Aprakat Leela. So Krishna is performing his Aprakat Leela there, which means that he is still performing Leela but we cannot see it. So all of the devotees of Vrindavan are still there, but we cannot see it. If we train ourselves, then we can see Golok Dham, even while we are in Vrindavan UP. So yes, some aspects are still there, and some aspects we can perceive, but the real Vrindavan Dham is hidden from our eyes. In fact, to explain that further, there is one story, I'm sure you would have heard that. There was one bhakta of Lord Shiva, and he was asking Lord Shiva for the greatest treasure. So Lord Shiva said, why don't you go to Rupa Goswami? Rupa Goswami has the greatest treasure. Rupa Goswami is a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he said, go to him in Vrindavan, he will give you the biggest treasure. So he goes to him and asks him that Lord Shiva has told me to ask you for the biggest treasure. So then he says that, yeah, actually the biggest treasure I've thrown in the dustbin. He says, what is that? He says it's a Chintamani jewel. What is a Chintamani jewel? A Chintamani jewel is one which if you touch that to anything, it becomes gold. Yeah, so he was like, oh wow, this is great. So he went, he picked that Chintamani jewel, he started touching it to everything, and everything was becoming gold. So he became extremely baffled. He's like, wow, like Lord Shiva actually answered my prayers. Now I have gold, like I have the Chintamani jewel. But then he was intelligent, so he thought about it. He said that if this is the most valuable thing, why has Rupa Goswami thrown this in the bin? So he says that actually Rupa Goswami has something more valuable that he's hiding from me. So then he goes back to Rupa Goswami and asks him. He says that you're hiding something from me. What is more valuable than this jewel? So then he says that actually the more valuable thing than this is the holy name of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Within this holy name is a treasure, he says. And in front of the treasure of this holy name, the treasure that is obtained through this Chintamani jewel, he says it's completely useless. So then he says, really? He had some faith in Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Goswami said, you chant and you see for yourself. So he started chanting Hare Krishna without offenses and with complete faith that, I'll be able to see the real jewel. And it is explained that as he was chanting the holy name, the aprakat leela of Krishna manifested in front of him. So instead of the dark color of the Yamuna, he started seeing like Yamuna flowing with white milk. He started seeing all the rubies that I was talking about on the riverbeds. He started seeing the emeralds on the trees. And he became completely baffled. He said that, yes, this is the real jewel that is there in the spiritual world. And that Lord Shiva gave to me. Why? Because that's what Lord Shiva does. Like when he sees that a person is favorable towards or wants to understand higher realities, then he sends them to a pure devotee of Krishna. Because Lord Shiva is a devotee of Krishna as well. So he sends him to a pure devotee so that they can get mercy. And through this, that person, he became a pure devotee of Krishna also. It's not that he wanted to take the jewels and the emeralds for himself, but he was just so surprised to see all of that he became a devotee of Krishna as well. So, the aprakat leela is there still in Vrindavan, but it is hidden from our eyes. When we develop the eyes, then we will be able to see the aprakat leela and the real spiritual world also in Vrindavan.
So only the elevated souls could see that.
Yeah. They can see the real Vrindavan. Yeah. Like for example, very easy example. Krishna is there in the form of the deity. Can we see Krishna here or do we just see wood? We are just seeing wood. We can't see Krishna here. But the real devotees, they can actually see Krishna there. Yeah. When the eyes are trained in knowledge and when the eyes are trained from performing devotional service, they can really see deities. Like Pratyaksha, you can see Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmayam Susukham Kartum Abhyayam. If you perform devotional service properly, you will be able to see everything as reality. Whatever you read in books, you will see as reality. Yeah, and that's the level we want to achieve. Because otherwise, what's the point?
Happens in Vrindavan, if you just go to any our temples, you feel that yes, Krishna is actually standing there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's Radha Raman, Radha Damodar, Radha Vallabha.
Yeah, definitely. Like Krishna is definitely there. That is why it is recommended for devotees to visit the dhams also. Yeah, and take some spiritual inspiration every time. Yeah. Okay, very well. It's 10 past 8. We've got 10 minutes over, so I guess we will finish there. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.